Hi, I'm Lou Garrick. I'm a geologist at SYSTRA. I'm also the Disability Employee Resource Group Lead and Disability Pillar Co-Lead here at SYSTRA. Today I'm here with Ruth Gregory to talk about being a carer. So Ruth is a Senior Design Coordinator and also the Employee Resource Group Lead for the parents and carers. So hi Ruth, please can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, hi Lou. So I'm a single parent and carer to my 10-year-old autistic daughter who has co-occurring pathological demand avoidance, or PDA for short. Probably lots of people are familiar with autism, which is known for the differences in the way that information is processed, the way that you communicate or interact with people, difference in behaviour and interests, and sensory needs and learning needs. For pathological demand avoidance, it's slightly different. So a lot of the techniques that you use for autism are not always effective in the same way for a PDA, and that's why it's important to have the different diagnosis. And things like the communication tools, sensory therapies, and educational support or help with routines can help some children who are autistic. It may not necessarily be the case for a PDA. So for my child, she has a lot of emotional dysregulation. So PDA is basically characterized as needing autonomy. So being able to choose what tasks they are doing day to day, even from the basic things like putting socks on, what food they eat, what they drink. And a characteristic of PDA is that the nervous system is always in a state of high arousal, which triggers fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses from typical day-to-day demands like needing their own autonomy. There can be lots of little things like putting socks and shoes on or not wanting to go out to the shops. It can be sensory needs, or it can be the demand of doing that task. So it's a little bit about the sort of care needs that I do day to day, and I work.
Are you full-time carer? I was going to say that, Ruth. So you work full-time, and you're also a full-time Senior Design Coordinator.
Yeah.
So how do you find balancing everything, balancing life, so balancing work with your caring responsibilities for your daughter?
It's really tricky. I'm full-time because my child has emotional-based school avoidance and has only just been approved an EOTAS plan, which is education other than school. So you apply for an EHCP, which is an educational healthcare plan, and they look into the different options for school. And so they look at all the needs of the child and put that in the education healthcare plan, and they decide what kind of education is suitable. So it might be a mainstream with care, it might be a SEN setting, or in the case of my child, it's education that is not in an academic setting because she can't engage in that sort of learning. She has to be, physically doing things to learn. And it has to be based on her autonomy, what she wants to do. So it's a bit more bespoke than your typical curriculum. So I do that full time. So I'm balancing work and sort of managing her care needs and education at the same time, which obviously is quite a lot. Yeah. And I'm a single parent as well, which has its own complexities, I'm sure.
Wow, Ruth, it sounds like you've got a lot going on. And I think you're a real role model for the carers out there. So do you think you'll go into to explain to us today a few of the care duties that you hold or that you carry out for your daughter? I think there's a few. We've talked in the past, and I think there's a big list, but I don't know if we can go into them all today. But if you go for a few, that'd be really great.
Definitely. So we're saying it's quite tricky to balance because there's a lot of demands placed on you. And often we think about the additional tasks of a carer. So you'll be supporting your loved one with mobility, so helping them move around, helping them with their personal hygiene, or their specific food requirements, giving medication, and sort of crisis management in my case, and regulating challenging behaviour with your specialist knowledge and sensory needs on very little sleep. But that's probably not the trickiest thing, I would say. One of the trickier bits to handle are the care duties that require external input. So to make sure that your loved one is going to reach their full potential, you often have to apply for extra support because you can't be everything for one person. And to do that is a significant amount of work. It's not just the care role and your job and looking after yourself, but it's being an administrator who collects all the documents from professionals to be able to apply for that support. It's helping them with mobility. In my case, you have to apply for blue badges and things, or driving them to different appointments, because I have a child that bolts and has no awareness of safety, especially when she's dysregulated, which means that I have to submit specific professional reports to get the blue badge. So that's one aspect of admin. I have to, obviously I spoke about applying for an EHCP, which again, you have to speak to all the schools, speak to the local authority, you'll have an educational psychologist, and those services don't talk to each other. You might have occupational therapy who look at sensory needs and speech and language and maybe specific learning needs like dyslexia. None of those people speak to each other to put the reports together. You have to get all the information. I've got a massive binder full of stuff and hand it over to them so that they can make the right decision. There are a lot of additional things like applying for respite, social care assessments if you need some support in the home, applying for financial support. Part of caring for someone with disabilities, there was a study done, I think by Scope, and they said it costs an extra 60% per month per household to support someone with disabilities, which equates to about an extra £1,000, just short of £1,000 per house per month, which if you are a single parent, for instance, that's quite a substantial amount of money because you don't have an extra income coming in. And it can provide a lot of things like, for example, in my situation, my child needs a lot of specific clothing. They have sensory needs and will only wear about 2 pieces of clothing overall, and they won't cope with wearing shoes, socks, coats, that sort of thing. And the ones that they do cope with are like dresses or shorts, and it changes from one month to the next. So recently I had to buy dresses from a shop in a certain material that they would tolerate, cut off the bottom and learn to do it on a sewing machine. Which
you've learned to sew.
Yeah, learned to sew.
Amazing.
Which is a whole task in itself.
Yeah.
But a lot of those things, you'll trial things, so it does cost money because I'm trying new things all the time to see if it makes an improvement to my loved one. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of families in that situation. There aren't external services that sort of provide those tools to you. You have to explore it because everyone's so unique, so individual.
Yeah, and everyone looking after someone else or caring for someone else, the carer's needs will be different as well. So that, yeah, it's really challenging. But obviously, you sound like a fab mum. Gone out, got a sewing machine, and you've learnt to sew. Hopefully, it's made a massive difference, and your little daughter will enjoy wearing some clothes.
We were talking about the other day, she was taken a liking to some fluffy ghost pyjamas, which is really unusual for her. So we're all Halloween themed out for the next couple of months.
Do you reckon she might be wearing them all year now if they fit? So yeah, that's her new outfit. You'll be leaving the house with fluffy ghost pyjamas on, but if she's happy, then it makes your life a bit easier. You'll have to get some matching ones, Ruth.
You might childcare mood to go with
Yeah,
it.
sounds like a good idea. Oh. So you said about fluffy ghost pajamas. So how does your daughter sleep? Are they? Do you get? You said you have a lot of lack of sleep. So that's obviously a challenge for your daughter, but also a challenge for you. So how do you cope with that? And
that's one of the big things, really, in being a carer, because I'm managing so much. Because I've got to get up for work, I don't get the extra sleep that I might do if I wasn't working. So my daughter doesn't sleep very well. She has trouble staying asleep all through the night, and she can't be in her own bed. She gets very anxious, which triggers a fight, flight, freeze at night. And you're obviously very conscious as a parent of the noise that that's making to your neighbours, and trying to get as much rest as you can. So it's better if they're sleeping, rather than battling for them to be in the other room. And to get to sleep, it can take about 3 hours. It used to be a very specific routine, and now she's older, she sort of doesn't take to that as well. Her sort of demand avoidance is a lot higher now that she's older. My daughter takes melatonin to get to sleep, which is prescribed by a paediatrician, which is another professional I have to go and see every year. And sourcing that melatonin is quite difficult because you have to fill in forms. The process before, you had to call on a certain day at a certain hour, and they would never be free because everyone's trying to call. And then now it's a lot easier because we fill in a form. With melatonin, it probably takes about an hour, but it does mean I'm reliant on her agreeing to take the melatonin. So often that's quite late, and then I have to get up for work anyway. So the amount of sleep that I get is quite tricky. Sometimes I can get a good 8 hours and I feel really good, and sometimes I just get 4 hours and I'm like a zombie throughout the day. But again, it's one of those things that you just have to do the best that you can. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my daughter, but she's an absolute joy to be around. Obviously, the trickiest thing of that is fitting it around working and trying to maintain an element of self-care.
that must be challenging. You've got lots of appointments, I think, you need to go to, and lots of therapies, and you need to get the melatonin. I think,
Yeah.
I don't know how you get that, Ruth. Is that on a prescription for your daughter?
It is, yeah. It was on a prescription, and it used to be that they'd bring it from a pharmacy across the other side of town. Thankfully, now they order it to a local one, which is a lot more efficient, so I can just go and pick it up. But it has to be approved through various professionals because it's a controlled substance. So yeah, sourcing all these things is, it's a lot of work. You have to constantly know where things are and chase people for reports. The life of a carer is not easy.
No, you've got your big binder with all your information, which you've had to keep, and you've had to collate, so you can get all the specialist help and support and all the therapies and everything that your daughter needs. So
and you have to know all of those processes inside out. You have to, like on your projects, you learn the processes that are required to get something out the door. It's very similar in a care situation. You have to know the law. You have to know how things work because all the professionals have different processes and often they conflict. So it's
a challenge, isn't it?
It's a whole other piece of work.
Yeah. So you've got a full-time job, you've got a daughter to look after, and you've got to navigate all these services, appointments, and it's a lot for you as a single mom and someone working a job under pressure, because we know that we work hard here at SYSTRA, but it's really rewarding at the same time. What advice would you give to people, to line managers or to people that you work with, if they know that you're a carer, or if people don't really talk about being a carer? How could people approach the subject? What do you think the best piece of advice would be? So I know you're quite open, Ruth. You talk quite openly about your situation, and you are, I would say, a role model. Could you give any advice to people opening up a little bit to the peers?
I definitely think, for me, obviously, you said I'm quite open, but it's about learning about your peers. So the best thing for me in SYSTRA is being part of the ERGs and meeting people who have similar situations. You find people that you can connect with, and you don't have to explain all the additional work to them, because sometimes it's really hard to get people to understand what you go through day to day without people maybe thinking you're complaining or, always really negative. But obviously, it's such a huge impact on your life that you do want people that you know and you can talk to. And maybe if you need support, they might have done something that you can use.
They might have some information, or that you've gone through a certain system, or you've used a certain company that has been able to help you. I mean, I don't know all the companies or the people that you have to go to for support. There must be a massive list, Ruth. So
exactly, yeah. And knowing, there's some helplines that have been really useful for me when my child had emotional-based school avoidance initially, because it's very traumatic. And those helplines, the only way I found them was through sort of social media and finding other parents that are going through the same thing. It's the same in a company. When you're working around people, you want to find people who understand that you're caring on top of work, because there are some things that you can't do. Like, I can't go to some of the groups for parent carers or for parents of PDAs, for example, because they're 9 to 5, which puts an additional barrier, another isolation on you as a person, because you have your own needs to meet as well as looking after your loved one. So it's really important to find those, or even create them. Like,
we've played a balance.
Yeah, we've created some ERGs to help that find people.
It's a safe space, isn't it, as well? People can talk openly and share their stories, share their experiences, and even if you're just having a challenging day, I think it's just nice to have people that understand, and that can be there for you. And I think it's great that you've created that employee resource group. So thank you, Ruth. I want to move on to self-care and making time for yourself, Ruth, because you work full-time, you're a carer, you're doing so much. How do you make time for you in all of this?
So, it's, again, a tricky one to provide care to, self-care, I should say. I was saying to you before, we don't have a lot of time. So between work and managing the care of my daughter, and a lot of that is quite physical and emotionally demanding. It has its own cost on your body and your well-being. You don't get a break. It's 24/7. Obviously, I'm up quite a lot in the night. There aren't any sick days. There's no one coming to help in my case. So I find comfort in the smaller things, like when I can sit down and have a cup of tea and learn some languages. At night, I quite like to learn some languages on an app, which is a bit of personal growth for me. Occasionally, I'll sit and watch a series on something while she's settling down for sleep. Mostly, it's talking to people about the situation and not feeling so isolated, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully by people listening to this and sharing your story, you can resonate with others and they won't feel so alone, and they'll probably be able to understand your situation a little bit more. You've really explained a lot to me, and I knew that you're a parent and carer and work full time, but I didn't quite realise how much energy this takes for you. So Yeah, you are an inspiration, Ruth, to those people out there. So, have you got any last bits of advice or anything you want to share? I think, yeah, we spoke about having like little phrases and sayings we say to each other, but can you remind me what it was? Because I think it'd be really good for you to share.
Yeah, my mantras.
Oh yeah, it's your mantra.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
So there are a couple that I use.
Okay.
Obviously, I mentioned before that my child can be quite violent because of the fight, flight, freeze responses, and it can last for a significant amount of time. So it can be between 30 minutes and 2 or 3 hours, depending on the severity of the meltdown. So I like to remind myself of little mantras. So the first one is behavior is communication, because I'm always looking for the reason behind why something has happened, or something I could have done better, or a trigger that we could have avoided. And the second one is a phrase which originates, I think, from New Zealand, which is takiwatanga, and they describe autism as being in their own space and time, which I think is really pertinent when I'm trying to rush to get to work or to do something, or my priorities are very rigid because I'm a single parent. I want to go and do something, and that doesn't match the autonomy of a PDA. So I remind myself of that, which really helps me keep calm and deal with the situation to not escalate any behaviour.
That's good. So there are phrases that you use or mantras to keep yourself going sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing those, Ruth. I love those. I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your perspective on being a parent and carer. I know that you've written an article, you've produced an article that we're going to share. It'll be shared on social media. So thank you very much, Ruth.
Oh, thanks, Lou, for listening to me.
That's great. I've really enjoyed learning, Ruth, so thank you very much for sharing.